If you've ever driven through the rural backroads of Southeast Asia after midnight, you know there's a different set of rules out there. It's not just about watching for potholes or stray dogs. It's about something older, something that doesn't appear on GPS. Every local driver, every Grab delivery rider, every uncle on his way home from the late shift knows the unspoken rule. If you're riding alone on a dark, isolated stretch of road and you see a figure standing by the side of a woman in white, a child waving, a person who looks lost or hurt, you do not slow down. You do not make eye contact. You grip the handlebars, you look straight ahead and you accelerate. You pretend you saw nothing. Because in the deep, humid darkness of the kampungs and the palm oil plantations, the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the Helista, unseen, is thin, paper thin. And sometimes, the things waiting on the roadside aren't looking for help. They're looking for company. They're looking for a ride home. And if you're kind enough to give it to them, you might find that the home they want to return to is not a place you can ever leave. Tonight, we're taking a ride down 3 of the most chilling, true accounts from the lonely roads of Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. These are stories from real people who broke the rule. They stopped, they offered kindness to the unknown, and they paid a price that still haunts them every time they hear the hum of an engine at night. Turn down the lights, listen to the cicadas, and whatever you do, don't pick up the passenger. I'm your guide. Let's ride. This first story comes from a man named Yusuf, a factory worker who lived in a small village in the state of Johor, Malaysia, surrounded by endless acres of palm oil plantations. It was the early 2000s, and Yusuf worked the second shift at a textile plant, which meant he was riding his old Honda EX5 moped home every night around 1 a.m. The route was a lonely one. A narrow, winding road that cut through the plantations, with no street lights, no houses, just the towering uniform rows of palm trees and the constant deafening chorus of insects. He'd made that ride 1,000 times. He knew every curve, every pothole, every stretch where the mist tended to gather thick as soup. But one night, during the rainy season, he approached a sharp S-curve near an old, abandoned rubber processing shed, and his single headlight caught something that made his blood freeze. A woman, standing in the tall, wet grass at the edge of the asphalt, was wearing a traditional Malay baju kurung, but it was wrong. It was white, the color of mourning and burial shrouds, and it was soaking wet, clinging to her thin frame as if she'd just crawled out of the nearby monsoon drain. Her hair was long, black, and hung completely over her face, obscuring any features, and she was weeping. Not crying, but weeping. A low, wet, shuddering sob that cut through the engine noise and the cicadas like a cold knife. Yusuf's brain screamed the local warnings: Pontianak, Langsweer, Jangan Berhenti. Don't stop. The Pontianak is the spirit of a woman who died in childbirth, a vengeful entity that preys on men, known for her white dress, her long hair, and the faint, sweet smell of frangipani blossoms that follows her. But Yusuf was young, and his heart was soft. Woman alone in the rain, crying miles from anywhere. His conscience overrode his fear, pulled over about 10 meters ahead of her, the moped's engine idling, and called out over his shoulder, "Kak! Awak okay, K? Perlukan Bantuan. Sister, are you okay? Do you need help?" The weeping stopped instantly. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the sound had been. The woman began to walk toward him. She didn't walk normally. Her movements were stiff, jerky, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Her feet didn't seem to quite touch the wet asphalt. She stopped right behind his moped, so close he could feel the cold radiating off her body, even through the humid night air. She didn't get on the seat. She just stood there, behind him. He could smell her now, not frangipani, but the thick, cloying, sweet-rotten smell of wet earth and decaying flowers. And then she spoke. Her voice was a low, wet gurgle, like someone speaking with a mouth full of water. Ramasaya jaw. Bawasaya plong. My home is far. Take me home. Yusuf's hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the throttle. He asked, his voice cracking, Mana Rama a whack. Where's your home? She raised one thin, pale arm and pointed, not down the road ahead, not to a village. She pointed directly into the darkest part of the palm oil plantation, where the trees were so dense no light penetrated. And in the moment her arm was raised, a gust of wind lifted the curtain of her hair. Yusuf saw her face. It wasn't a face. It was a smooth, featureless blank of pale skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just an empty, fleshy canvas where a face should have been. Still wet and glistening as if newly formed. And from that blank face, the gurgling voice came again. Bawa saya pulang. Yusuf screamed and twisted the throttle. The moped lurched forward, tires spinning on the wet road. He didn't look back. He didn't slow down. He flew through the S-curve at a speed that should have killed him, the moped skidding and fishtailing on the slick asphalt. He didn't stop until he burst into the fluorescent safety of his village's main road, where an old uncle was closing up his warring for the night. He collapsed off his bike, shaking and pale. He told the uncle what he'd seen. The old man listened, nodded slowly, and poured him a cup of thick, sweet tea. A cow burn a seed bake, the uncle said. You are lucky. She asked for a ride home. Some Pontianak. Don't ask. They just climb on the back of your bike. And if you feel a cold weight on your seat and you look in your mirror and see nothing, you're already hers. You ride until your petrol runs out, and then you walk into the plantation, and they never find you. They only find your bike, still idling by the side of the road. Yusuf never rode that road at night again. He changed shifts at the factory, took a pay cut, and only traveled during daylight. He told me years later that sometimes when he's driving alone at night, even in the city, he can still smell that faint, sweet rotten smell. And he checks his rearview mirror obsessively, terrified that one day he'll see a flash of white sitting on the seat behind him. Our second story takes us north to the misty mountains of Chiang Mai, Thailand. This comes from a woman named Molly, a nurse who worked at a small clinic in a village on the slopes of Doi Suth Mountain. She was used to late-night drives. The clinic was understaffed, and she often finished her shift well after midnight, riding her scooter down the winding, steep mountain road toward the city lights below. The road was famous for its sharp hairpin turns, its thick fog that rolled in without warning, and its numerous spirit houses, small, ornate shrines placed at dangerous curves to appease the restless dead. Molly was a practical woman, a nurse who believed in science and medicine, but she also respected the old ways. She always gave a small way, respectful bow when passing a spirit house. One night during the cold season, the fog was the thickest she'd ever seen. Visibility was maybe 5 meters. She was creeping along at a crawl, her scooter's weak headlight just illuminating a swirling wall of white. She was approaching a particularly notorious curve. Locals called it Ghost Corner because of the number of accidents when her headlight caught something small in the road. A child, a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wearing a faded red shirt and traditional fisherman's pants. He was standing right in the middle of her lane, facing away from her. Staring into the fog, Molly's heart lurched. She squeezed the brakes, the scooter skidding to a stop just a meter from the boy. She called out, "Nun, nun, dan, tham arai, you trong ne." "Little one, what are you doing here?" The boy turned around. His face was pale, but normal. A round, cherubic face with dark eyes and a small nose. He looked lost, confused. He pointed down the road deeper into the fog and said in a small, clear voice, "Pai bon mai tuk. Chua noi dai mai. I can't find my way home. Can you help me?" Molly's nurse instincts kicked in. A lost child on a freezing mountain road in the middle of the night. She couldn't just leave him. She gestured for him to climb onto the scooter. He did, his small hands gripping the sides of her jacket. She started driving slowly, asking him where his house was. He didn't answer. He just pointed ahead into the fog. They rode for about 5 minutes in silence. Then Molly felt something odd. The child's grip on her jacket was cold, not just cooled from the mountain air, but deeply, unnaturally cold, like gripping ice cubes through the fabric. And he was light, impossibly light. It felt like there was nothing behind her at all. She glanced down at the side mirror. The mirror was fogged over. She wiped it with her gloved hand. The reflection showed the empty road behind her, and the seat behind her was empty. No child, but she could still feel the cold grip on her jacket. And then she heard it. A laugh, a child's giggle, high and clear, but it wasn't coming from behind her. It was coming from inside her own helmet. A giggle that echoed in her ears, intimate and close, as if the child was sitting right inside her head. "Kop kan ka," the voice whispered. "Thank you," and then the cold grip vanished. The weight on the scooter returned to normal. Molly slammed on the brakes and spun around. The seat was empty. The road was empty. Just the swirling white fog and the distant hum of a temple bell from somewhere down in the valley. She didn't wait. She drove straight to the nearest 24-hour police box at the base of the mountain. She was shaking so badly the officer had to help her off the scooter. She told him what happened. He didn't laugh. He just nodded grimly and said, "Kanchak, D-Mac. It's Pra-Phi. You are very lucky." It was a phi. He explained that the mountain was home to many spirits of children who had died in accidents on the dangerous road. Sometimes they get lonely. They want to play. They want someone to take them home, but they have no home. They just ride. If you're kind enough to give them a lift, they'll thank you and leave. But if you show fear, if you try to push them off, they get angry. And they might decide to take you with them to their real home, wherever that is. Molly still works at the clinic. She still drives that road at night. But now, when she passes the spirit houses, she doesn't just why. She leaves a small offering, a piece of candy, a little toy car. And if she ever sees a child in the fog again, she knows what to do. She'll keep driving, because some passengers aren't looking for a ride home. They're looking for a playmate. Forever. Our final story of the night takes us south, across the sea, to the island of Java in Indonesia. This account comes from a young man named Budi, a university student in Yogyakarta who was visiting his grandmother in a remote village near the slopes of Mount Merapi. Budi was a city boy, used to the noise and lights of Yogyakarta, the village, with its unpaved roads, its total darkness after 9 p.m., and its deep, superstitious silences always made him uneasy. His grandmother's house was at the end of a long, straight road that cut through rice paddies and banana groves. There were no streetlights, just the stars, and if you were lucky, the faint glow of oil lamps from distant houses. One night around 11 p.m., Booty was riding his uncle's old Honda Windback from a friend's house in the next village. The road was empty. The only sound was the croaking of frogs and the distant bark of a village dog. He was enjoying the cool night air, the sense of freedom, when his headlight caught something up ahead. A motorcycle, parked on the side of the road, its engine off, its headlight dead, and standing next to it, waving slowly, was a figure. Booty slowed down. As he got closer, he saw that the figure was a man. Wearing a dark jacket and a saranga, traditional wrapped cloth, and a pesi cap on his head. He looked like a local villager. His motorcycle looked like it had broken down. Booty, being a helpful person and knowing how remote the area was, pulled over. He called out the standard greeting, "Permisi Pak, Ada Masala." "Excuse me, sir, is there a problem?" The man didn't answer. He just kept waving, slowly, mechanically. Booty felt a prickle of unease. He noticed something odd about the man's posture. He was standing very straight, too straight, and his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, as if he was trying to look at something on his shoulder. Booty killed his engine and walked closer. Pak was about 3 meters away when the man finally stopped waving. Then he turned around to face Booty fully. The man had no head. His neck ended in a ragged, wet red stump glistening in the faint starlight. The pesi cap was perched on the stump, held in place by a piece of string tied under where the chin should have been. Buddy's scream died in his throat. He was frozen, paralyzed by a terror so absolute his legs wouldn't work. The headless figure took a step toward him. Its hand came up, pointing not at Booty, but at its own broken-down motorcycle. And then a voice came from the empty air where its mouth should have been, a voice that was wet, gurgling, and full of an immense, infinite sadness. "Tolong saya mo pulang, tapi saya tidak bisa melihat jalannya. Help me. I want to go home. But I can't see the road." The figure took another step. Buddy's paralysis broke, scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet, and fell onto the dirt road. He crawled away from the figure, scrambled to his feet, and ran. And back to his own motorcycle, kicked the starter frantically, and the engine roared to life. He sped away, not looking back. He burst into his grandmother's house, gasping and crying. His grandmother, an old woman with a face like cracked leather and eyes that had seen too much, listened to his babbling story. She didn't seem surprised.
Ow.
She just lit a clove cigarette and nodded slowly. "Kamu kitemu Pocong," she said. "You met a Pocong?" She explained that in Javanese burial traditions. The deceased is wrapped in a white burial shroud, the kafan, and tied at the head, neck, and feet. The soul is supposed to remain in the grave for 40 days before being released. But sometimes, if the knots are not untied by a family member, the soul is trapped. It becomes a Pocong hopping, shrouded spirit, bound to the earth, unable to see because its head is tied. It wanders the roads at night, looking for someone to help it. To untie the knots, to let it go home. But the thing is, you can't untie a Pocong's knots. Only family can. And if you try, you might get tangled in the shroud yourself. You might take its place. Booty didn't sleep that night. He left the village the next morning and never returned. He's a successful businessman in Jakarta now. He drives a nice car. He never rides a motorcycle anymore. He says sometimes when he's driving alone on a quiet road at night, he sees a broken down motorcycle on the shoulder. and a figure waving. He presses the accelerator and doesn't look back, because he knows now some people are looking for a ride home, but they can't see the road. And if you help them, you might lose your own way forever. 3 roads, 3 riders, 3 encounters with the unseen that linger long after the engine has cooled. Yusuf in Malaysia, who offered a ride to a weeping bride and saw a face that wasn't there. Molly in Thailand, who gave a lost child a lift and heard his giggle inside her own helmet. And Budi in Indonesia, who tried to help a stranded villager and found a man who couldn't see his own way home. The roads of Southeast Asia are ancient. They cut through jungles and plantations and mountain passes that have been steeped in folklore for centuries. The rules of the road out there aren't just about traffic. They're about survival. They're about knowing when kindness is a trap, and when the best thing you can do for a stranger is to pretend you never saw them. So the next time you're driving alone at night, whether it's on a rural Asian road or any dark, empty stretch of highway anywhere in the world, remember these stories. Remember the unspoken rule. If you see a figure on the shoulder, waving, crying, laughing, needing help, just keep driving. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't offer them a ride home, because home for some is a place you can't find on any map. And once you go there, you don't come back. If this journey into the dark roads of Southeast Asia gave you chills, do me a favor. Hit that like button, it helps other travelers find these stories. Subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell. We explore the shadows of Asian folklore every week. Now tell me in the comments, which of these 3 encounters would have made you gun the throttle and never look back? And have you ever experienced something unexplainable on a dark road? I read every single story. The comment section on this channel is a living archive of the strange and the terrifying. Until next time, ride safe. Keep your headlight bright. Don't pick up the passenger, not the one in white, not the one who giggles, and never, ever the one who can't see the road.